Well, this sure has been an interesting week in the history of British politics, hasn't it? Last week, Elon Musk called out current serving British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, saying he should be in jail, accusing him of covering up the grooming gang scandal while he was head of the CPS. And since the public debate about all of this has exploded, people such as Nigel Farage have been demanding a public inquiry into this.
We thought initially that in half a dozen northern towns there was a serious problem. Mass sexual assaults of children and young women. But recent research from journalist Charlie Peters at GB News now says he's certain this has taken place in at least 50 different towns in our country, at least 50, and that it's still going on today. The J inquiry, it's 459 pages long. Grooming gangs are not mentioned once. Rotherham is literally mentioned once in passing. What we need is a rifle shot inquiry. I might be right, I might be wrong, but doesn't the country deserve a full, open national inquiry?
I'm not going to go into detail with the nature of these crimes, mostly because I'll probably end up sharing a jail cell with Tommy Robinson if I do. Yet the abridged version is for the last 30 years in this country there have been organised crime gangs from a very specific minority demographic in this country that have been targeting children, some as young as 12 years old, from outside of their demographic, and systematically grooming and sexually assaulting them over years. Literally thousands of police reports have been made, and yet the police nor High Court judges didn't do anything because the guidelines made them afraid of being accused of racism. And allegedly, all of this is still going on as we speak, up and down the country. One of the most well-documented cases was a girl called Sammy Woodhouse, who testified to the police when she was caught smashing up a kebab shop that this was happening to her since she was 14, herself and her family being threatened with murder if she told anyone, and any time she did go to the police, nothing was done. One girl anonymously said she was being treated as a game of pass the parcel being moved from one town to the other by these criminals. Another said she was covered in petrol and threatened with being set ablaze if she told anyone. Another said how she went to the police 5 times with bruises, saying how she was assaulted by these criminals while they were calling her racial slurs. And the police did not even bring them in for questioning, let alone give them their day in court.
You went to the police 5 times with physical wounds and evidence, and the police said there's nothing we can do.
I was gobsmacked, not even question the perpetrator, not even, take photographic evidence or anything. When I was being beaten, I was being called a white slag, a white whore. References to my whiteness was always at the forefront of my perpetrator's mind. All the police have been trained for a long time is to preserve interracial relations, to not raise any racial hatred, to not accuse people of doing something which could cause anti-Muslim prejudice. Looking at it from the perpetrator's perspective rather than from the victim's perspective. The system has been set up. It has been set up to have protected groups, and white people and non-Muslim people are not a protected group according to the guidelines.
Testimonies like these show the devastating impact of institutional failures and why we need a thorough investigation to uncover the truth. Now, Elon Musk directly accused Sir Keir Starmer of being complicit in these crimes, since at the time it was his job to look at these cases and decide if they needed to go to trial or not, and he decided these weren't credible cases. And by a complete coincidence, allegedly, the perpetrators of these crimes just so happened to be part of one of the main voting demographics of his political party. Now, it needs a disclaimer here that we don't know what the truth is with the Prime Minister. We don't have any actual evidence that he threw entire sectors of the working class under the bus, refusing to do his job for political gain. We don't know that for a fact. It's entirely possible that he's just plain stupid, and he climbed the greasy pole of his political party and somehow became the Prime Minister with sheer luck alone. We don't know. We would know, however, if there was a public inquiry on this exact issue that looks into the ethnicities and motivations of these groups, as well as the records and emails of all of these public servants whose job it was to enforce the law. If, hypothetically, some emails turned out of that inquiry that show Starmer and others directly chose to sweep these crimes under the rug out of fear of what this could do politically in these areas, then that would be the smoking gun that would prove Elon Musk's accusations correct. There is one problem, though. That inquiry is not going to happen. It's not going to happen because the Labour government voted against that inquiry. And they didn't just vote against it, Sir Keir Starmer outright ordered his MPs to vote against this at threat of taking their whip away. After that, not a single one of them voted for this. Interestingly though, he himself decided to abstain. Make of that what you will. And on top of that, the Labour Party are talking of bringing in further legislation to criminalise talking about the ethnicities of these criminals in question, even further expanding the definition of hate speech. And some of them have even gone so far as suggesting we should ban Twitter in the UK and suggesting that Musk is a terror threat. But hey, it could be worse. The Labour Party this week could have crashed the economy even worse than Liz Truss did back in 2022.
Tricksters, villains, whoremasters! You are no more capable of conducting this nation than you are of running a brothel!
Needless to say, this is not a good week for the Labour Party. It's almost as if they're intentionally trying to outdo the Tories in betraying the confidence of the country. It doesn't take a genius to see this state of affairs is a little bit less than desirable. And I've got news, folks, but it's not going to get better. I mean, the Reform Party are now neck and neck with the Labour Party, so one way or the other, this is really bad for the Labour Party politically. Yet that's not even the biggest problem, and that is the people in authority whose job it was to deal with these crimes for the last 30 years, and chose to look the other way. These people, if there is evidence this is what they did over politics and career advancement, then these people need to go to jail. And guess what? They won't. Not under this government anyway. Because the truth is, people are self-serving before they are public serving, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. These criminals committed these crimes with such openness and confidence because the law let them commit them. If these people in authority allegedly corrupted the law for their own gain, they did so because they could. The Labour Party stopped this inquiry and did all they could to silence dissent because they could. They are in power. The truth is, this is human nature and a serious flaw with representative democracy. We don't see this kind of political corruption in Switzerland with their direct democracy, after all. Even if the Reform Party get into power one day, and if by some miracle that power doesn't corrupt them, and they don't sell out to the House of Lords, the civil service, and corporate lobby groups, and by some miracle they do demand this inquiry, and do demand those proven to have done this to go to jail, even if they were a former serving Prime Minister, it still won't change their own nature. They would hold the Labour Party to account only because they are an opposition political party, yet they would not hold themselves to those same standards. No party would. Let's not forget the Labour Party is only about 100 years old. Once upon a time they were the champions of the working class, a party for the people, by the people, much as Reform is now. Yet time corrupts all, and now it is the party of woke champagne socialists that bear far too many resemblances to the pigs in Animal Farm. And one day, Reform, after being in power for a few decades, will suffer the same fate. I'm voting Reform, yet I'm not going to delude myself that it has the solution to all these problems. In order to deal with the core of this democratic problem, we need direct democracy. And I hope one day I'll see it in my lifetime. As for the Labour Party, much like the Conservative Party, I've reached my final straw. The only vote I have to give those two parties now is a vote of no confidence.
This is no parliament. I hereby declare this parliament dissolved.
Anyway, those are my thoughts about that. If you have any thoughts yourself or any other topics you'd like me to cover, tell me in the comments below and I'll happily entertain them. Cheers.